resistance can be seen at a number of levels. One is just people's resistance, that life becomes so difficult that they just spontaneously stop and bring things to a standstill, or they beat up police, or they stop working. There is another level where it is an organized one, which is linked with the trade union movement or political organization. So some of the, we need to distinguish between different levels of resistance. And we'll look a bit at the cultural resistance also. Resistance can be at various levels, and the three strands which are recorded in this book or in these little booklets is people's resistance, people generally, Mau was in a sense the height of resistance, but linked to that was the trade union movement. The 40s group played a leading part in African politics, and they gradually sort of became Mau. So that was an important start of the process. This is something from a magazine called Africa Events, published in London. It was edited by somebody you might know, Abdul Latif Abdullah. But anyway, an image from there of people resisting. Countdown to Freedom, 1990. Those kind of demonstrations are not seen as part of resistance. They're just seen as individual events. The event is over, next day people go back to work, it's forgotten. There is a trend. The important thing is to see historical trend in events. If you just look at events, like if you read newspapers, they're just little bits and pieces of events. What does it mean in the long run? It's important to see the trend and see what picture is drawing those little events. It's again Sabah. I think. And again, of course, there's no resistance without the repression coming in. So the police are always there. But you see the power when people get together, it becomes irresistible. There is all sorts of dangers there, but united people's power is something that is difficult. Like it happened in Egypt, like in Algeria, people getting together is a powerful force. These are Moro resilience demonstrated in 1992. Now, the second bit deals with organized resistance. If you really want to bring about change, it's good to resist and fight and all the rest of it. But the important thing is how do we organize to resist? Our enemy, wherever they are, they may appear divided and they can fight with each other in parliament. At the end of the day, they are united. They know what the bottom thing they want is capitalism. CIA has all our documents of underground press and so on. We are trying to digitize them so that at least people in Kenya now can see them. But let's see how far we go with it. So among the first documents we need to look at is something called Independent Kenya. And the in is a different writing from dependent, clearly giving a message that Kenya was not independent. It was more, it's like saying independent Kenya. And this was done, the authors could not be named, but this was a big fat document which was circulated underground. And it was Hakuna Jiapa, private property. It was written by a group calling itself Cheche Kenya, which I think then became gradually December 12th movement and so on. But this is a fat book. I think there should be copies in the commercial library. It set out a whole program of what is happening in Kenya, where it is coming from and where it is going. You cannot have resistance, you cannot have any systematic opposition to capitalism without a program. And the programs are, in this case, the Independent Kenya, the Cheche group, came up with a well-written document, more comprehensive than anything that Kanu had produced. And it was later on published in London by Z Press in 1982. So it is, in that sense, available now. And I've sort of got a back cover of that book. If you have time to look at it, what is trying to say. He says the authors are a group of Kenyans from various parts of the country. They have had to remain anonymous because they are still living there. So if you are caught, you will be dead in no time. The text has already circulated quite extensively in mimeographed form before political activity became almost impossible, with the brutal repression that followed the Air Force rising in 1982. An underground newspaper which is circulated very widely. It was sent to people by post, it was kept at bus stops, at kiosks, all over the place, all over the country, not only in Nairobi. Pambana with a gun. That in order to change the system, like Mamo had to resort to the armed resistance, there is no other way, was, I think, the interpretation. And it's important, again, if you're serious about studying, is to look at our stand. What was the stand? Today, after more than 20 years, after Kanu formed the government and so on, the broad masses of Kenya are materially and politically worse off than before. That was in 1982. If you think about it today, I don't know if there is a word which explains worser, if there is a word like worser, it's even more worse than it was in 82. All these crimes have been brought in the name of progress and prosperity, under smatterings of love, peace and unity. This is not independence. The neocolonialism, this is neocolonialism in its worst form. Kenyans had fought many battles over. So it is important to see that Kenyans have not been sitting quietly under this repression and police. In spite of all that, in 82, that was what came out in 1982. And this is issue number 2. Well produced, well circulated, and the articles include the struggle continues to look at what was happening. And this was also important at that time. Moi and Jonjo standing on workers and peasants, and this guy, worker, saying, the oppressed have nothing to gain by being drawn into these politics of greed and conspicuous consumption. Because they were told, oh, if you vote for this, he's your tribe or your Kabila or whatever the excuses they use. And this guy is saying no. And they accuse each other and so on. We don't, and this person says, presumably present, we don't want to change only the face. We must change the system of exploitation completely in Kenya. And I think if there's one sentence you want where Kenya needs to go is to a change of system. And that was in 83, More Kenya. And More Kenya again wrote out its draft minimum program. You cannot fight a KANU or any other political party which stood for capitalism without your own program. Because what are you fighting for? You need people to think about an alternative. These documents again are in the composition. Draft minimum program 1987. And this gives the sort of contents of what they were talking about. We must dismantle the present neo-colonial old land, education, and it goes into details into each sector. It's like a government in waiting. That although it did not have that power because this old Roman Empire thing was in control. And it gives a nice historical background also. Resistance to colonialism from Mekatilili to Kimathi, Mau Mau. So if you're looking for a history of Kenya, if you go to any of these standard textbooks, you won't find it, but this is a good source. And also, they carried a map which called One Kenya, Many Nationalities, One People. So the KANU governments have been systematically dividing the people. You are this Kabila and you don't belong to me, and if you vote for me, I'm from your tribe, so-called. And here is the challenge to that, to say, we may be many people, many nationalities, and not even tribes. I didn't use the word tribe, it's our nationalities. It's 44 nationalities. And on a map, roughly it charts where we are, but it says it's one people, many nationalities, one people. And that is the message that never came from KANU. Again, the heroes and heroines of the struggle. It's from the draft minimum program. Field Marshal Baimonge, Yogama Pinto, Field Marshal Mwariuma, Kimathi, Buthoni, Field Marshal General Tanganyika, Makan Singh, Mamo General Inspector. So it was very clear that they were taking a class position. They were not looking at the top guys who had their own heroes and so can build their statues. I see this Kenya North has this huge statue like Egyptian sort of pyramid thing, image of Kenyatta. I mean, he kills people and we celebrate him in our north. How foolish can we be? The important thing is the role of the working class in resistance. If there is only one book or two books you are able to read in your life, in order to understand the history of Kenya, read Makan Singh's two books, History of Trade Union Movement in Kenya, especially the first volume. And also this Makan Singh's archives are at the University of Nairobi, if you want more details. And the working class was the most powerful force in Kenya. I think after South Africa, Kenya's was the most powerful trade union movement. And how it was set up, what it did, it's an important part of life. So start looking at, and this book, Kenya's Register of Resistance, it's an important thing to record resistance. I don't think anybody does it these days. But More Kenya did it in 1987, and it recorded resistance of workers. It recorded resistance by towns, so it wasn't just one in Nairobi, but it calls them towns of resistance. And it goes into workers, peasants, students, petty bourgeois, all sorts of different resistance. It's a very, very important record. But unfortunately, needs to be done on a regular basis, needs to be done. Now, I think Okumbo's library is trying to do something like that, but it needs more work to be done. More Kenya also published its democracy plan in recognition of the language issue. It translated this into Kiswahili, Mpango wa Demokrasia. Msimamo, the stand, More Kenya's stand. These are all documents of Kenyan history, which should be taught in school, and particularly in universities. The history department here, I don't think it's even bothered or even knows these things exist. An important document from Umoja in Kenya, in London, which was allied to More Kenya, is this struggle for democracy in Kenya. And it has a number of other publications. And this was perhaps the most important, Moi's reign of terror. It documented deaths, what Moi regime was up to. Moi, after this book was published, Moi found it difficult to go to any part of the world. Because everywhere he went, the embassies or international amnesty and all that would throw this book at him and say, where is Kenya? Where are you taking Kenya? Up to then, the image was, oh, very nice, clean country. But this documented the massacres, murders, and so on, which is, again, the next few pages, which I won't go into it. There was an important conference in 1987 in London, the Unity Conference. Kenyans who were exiled, thrown out of Kenya, went to various European countries, various African countries. In 1987, each of them being political, because they were political, they had set up their own organizations in the countries wherever they worked. Then they came together in 1987 in London and formed Umoja. But this conference had some very important documents, which again are not available in public, but Okumbo's library has them. Which is, in fact, each delegate, each center that was represented, presented a document of resistance of their country. So there are documents on learning from our past, resistance in Central and Rift Valley, in the coast, in the north, women in Kenya's people struggle, Kenyan Asians in resistance in Nyanza and Western Kenya, and so on. So those documents are historical, important documents, which should have been made available through the universities. And Umoja published a number of magazines also. This one is Habari za Umoja, 1989. Umoja issued a lot of press statements going on what's happening in Kenya. So this is a compilation of those statements. They published a document on law as a tool of repression, because law was used to oppress people, release political prisoners, and Kenya news we've seen. But these are just some things that was happening in London because it was so difficult to do things in Kenya. So Umoja was linked to More Kenya, and information that could not be published in Kenya, we had some secret methods of getting the information from Kenya to Britain, and we published it there. Now, resistance is not only in terms of ideology and all the rest of it. There's cultural resistance, and this is a Mau Mau song, which is part of their struggle, and it is linked to we will never give up without land on which to grow food, and without our own true freedom in our country of Kenya. So we will never be silent kind of thing. And that was Mau song. And I think we need to reclaim those songs because we haven't won what we fought for. And this one is the Wakamba carvers, they normally after independence, the country did not encourage local art. So the artists became artists for tourists. They started making things which the tourists wanted. But there's a group of Wakamba artists who used the Wakamba carvings and to depict Mau. So this one looks at women in the struggle, Mau. Meeting with Kenya Defense Council, democracy, where I don't know, 10,000 people would meet and have meetings and discussions. Gun making in the caves. And this is the women's role in the struggle, which is protect family, or collect food and bring the pictures. This one says, War of Independence, British fighter jets are powerless to stop resistance. So while the jets are doing their whatever jets do, people are continuing to resist and struggle. This one is Mau activists continue their resistance while home guards look for them. So home guards at the top are looking for Mau. Where are they? But Mau are underground. They cannot be seen, but they carry on with their struggles. And colonial justice, fearless fighter confronts judge and armed home guard. The trial of Durrani Kimathi. I heard today, I don't know if it's true or not, but that they found Kimathi's grave, his body. So it takes years and years to find our dead heroes because the government isn't bothered with it. And the multinational Mau forces, Senior Chief Mukudi of Samia and Buniala with Mau fighters. So it's a lie created by imperialism that it was only one nationality that fought. Again, I mean, you know, the cultural resistance can take many forms. This one is a Caribou Kenya evening in London. And an important part was at the University of Nairobi, we had a group called Sahamuya Utungaji. It's a creative group of people. And they were planning to write various history. They produced plays called Kinjikitele Majimaji, based on Kinjikitele's story, but made more revolutionary for Kenyan context. I mean, showed it the education lecture. But among them were artists who were drawing. This is Kimathi, but it's not by them. But these ones of Kagia was done by a member of that group. This guy was in Kabete. Chege Kibashia. Who are our heroes? I don't know, there's a debate going on about what is a hero and who is a hero. And these are sort of Fred Kuwai, Mahmoud Singh, Kipande House. Again, the history of Kipande is an important history. And this was a play we did of the Kinjikitele one I mentioned. This is another play in Gujarati called Our Country, Kenya, but it's performed by nursery school kids in Gujarati, a language which they did not know really, not many of them, because they all aspired to English, but they were taught to speak their own language. And they did a whole play on the history of Kenya at the nurseries. If you document your history, if you want it recognized, unfortunately, if you publish just in Kenya, it doesn't get that strength So try and publish them overseas. And this one is an article on Momo in the Communist Review published in in UK. These are some of the books that Vita Books published, including the posters, because posters are important, like I see all around here.